Hello everyone. Hello to the another Navaviva's live stream. Welcome to everyone, wherever you are. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody. Today we have a very special episode where we will be reading articles that we had actually written in Medium and also in Substack. So we have Nandi with us who will be reading this article. And this article talks about something very near dear to myself and to Indians. So today we are going to read articles on the diaspora Indians, specifically Hindu Indians, who were indentured laborers, who were taken by the British to the across the globe, from Fiji to Mauritius to Caribbean, as indentured laborers who were living in very bad conditions, and from that atrocities that they had faced. Today, we will talk about and read the historical facts which were documented in many books and research papers. So, Nandi, over to you. And Nandi will be reading the articles, and then the audience can ask questions on the chat. And if they feel, they can also join the stream later when we open it up for the audience. Nandi.
Namaskar, everyone. So today we thought of doing this stream to discuss about all the indentured labor and how it replaced slavery as a system and how it continued for a time and how it influenced all the Hindu diaspora across the world and how you can see the Hindu diaspora all across the world, even in remote islands of the Caribbean. So
Yeah, Nandi.
let's start with the I'll just share. So you can see our article in the links in the description, also in the pinned comment. Let me just share this Chrome tab. Yeah, yeah. Is it loaded?
Yes, it is loaded. I can see. Go
Yes,
ahead.
yes. So we are discussing about this article on Medium that we have written. So this is about contracts that have replaced the chains in sense that these
Nandi,
indentured.
uh,
Uh,
Nandi, before we
yeah,
start
yeah.
reading the article, can
Mhm.
we get an overview of what the article is all about so the audience can actually understand the context of which the article was written?
In the article or I say on like I should tell
The
about the
context,
article.
the yeah, the context of the indentured laborers who were
Yeah.
taken from UP, Bihar, erstwhile the uninhabited India, to distant
Hmm.
lands from
Hmm.
Mauritius to Caribbean to Fiji.
Hmm.
So, if you can give a
Hmm.
context of what the article is all about, that will help the audience to connect with the
Hmm.
content that we will read. Okay, we are seeing
So
into zoom a little. Need to zoom a little bit zoom is required so that audience can actually see because the map
yeah,
is very important to actually give a visual representation.
yeah. Map is fixed to the full screen. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, we can only do up to this in Chrome.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we have to. But the article is available on the Medium itself, so you
Yeah.
can
You
go
can
and read
also
it.
just go and read it with us if you want.
Yeah, the link is already there
In
in
the
the chat,
yeah
so you can just click
chat.
and read it with us.
There are two articles. First is this one, and the second is how they preserve their culture. So if you want to check out both the articles, you can check out that. So the background is this, Dada. So when British wanted to, because of their political pressures from Labour Party side, and there were a lot of progressionist protests against the slavery. They wanted to shift from the slavery system, but it was a huge, massive system, economic system, and all the slave owners to be uh, they were paid in order to free their slaves. But all the economic systems that are already in place, they could not be just leave it like that. So they needed someone to replace the workers. In some places, they hired those slaves that were already there and started paying them a little bit. Or even then, there were lots of famines, man-made famines in erstwhile uh, undivided India's Bihar, UP, United Provinces, and Tamil Nadu. And there were lots of, how do you say, labor available, and people needed food, and like they didn't have much to go on. So this was one of the reason that they were kind of manipulated to go on this long journey, to leave their homes and everything they knew of, to set off to a new land, to say, to, I guess in today's lens it would be called manipulated and enslaved, but then they didn't have much choice. So they, from here, if you see, there were some, uh, even in northern Sri Lanka, there were indentured laborers, even in Malaysia, and to far off Fiji and Mauritius, and if you see Trinidad and even Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago Islands and British Guyana, and all these provinces were,
Uh,
and these,
Nandi,
yeah,
just
yeah.
Nandi, just one question on this. So we have
Hmm.
heard about indigent laborers, primarily majority were coming from the erstwhile UP Bihar region. So the laborers which were came from Sri Lanka, can you shed more light? Because I don't think a lot of people know about that. Sri Lanka had sent laborers to the sugarcane
No, no, no.
plantations
It
across the globe.
was laborers were sent to northern Sri Lanka, Tamil origin from Tamil
Okay.
Nadu. Lots.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm.
where all the conflicts came from
Mm.
later in the later years.
Okay.
So northern, yeah,
Okay.
there were lots of plantations and rubber
They were
plantations of the
from Tamil
Dutch
Nadu.
and the, yeah, from Tamil Nadu. They were sent to northern Sri Lanka. There were a little bit of Tamil population already there, but this increased the population, as to say, in the northern Sri Lanka.
Oh, that's very interesting. I don't think many would know about it until who are living
Mhm,
in Tamil Nadu. Like rest of
mhm.
Indians would not know about it. So that's very information that
Yeah.
I know it for the first time now.
So it depends on the produce. So in the northern Sri Lanka, it was more of a rubber and tea, because that, and it was under Dutch control for a while, and then it came under British control. And here in Malaysia and some of the parts here, they used to grow all kinds of, even opium, I guess, for the Chinese wars. And in Fiji, there were sugar canes, and even in Trinidad and Tobago, there were sugar canes. In Eastern Africa, there were peppercorns from that area and other spices. So all these industries needed replacement, as to say, uh, to already freed slavery system that they had. So even the same ships that were used for shipping the slaves, the same ships were used for these indentured laborers. Even that system was the same. The only difference
So
was to,
this Nandi,
yeah,
so
yeah.
indentured labor which was being shipped from the Indian subcontinent to across the globe.
Mhm,
So it
mhm.
happened after the slavery was abolished. Is that something, or it was like pre-existing before the
No, 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 no.
slavery
It was not
was?
pre-existing. They needed replacement, then they started.
Okay,
Like,
so
see,
if I understand
hmm,
correctly, so the labor, the indentured labor, which was shipped across the
no,
oceans,
indentured
was
labor was already there in Indian subcontinent
okay. Okay. Hmm.
to grow opium and to grow tea for the British. There were lots of
Hmm.
Indian indentured labors already for them.
Hmm.
And after there were famines after 1857 wars. There were man-made famines in certain
Hmm.
districts of certain these states, and there
Hmm.
was massive unemployment, and there were lots of deaths, and these people didn't have any employment, so they needed something. Otherwise, they would riot, right? So British government thought it would be fine that they need to be sent on 5 years, you would say lease, like they were property. Yeah, that's the origin of this. After, yeah.
Thank you. I think this is something which is a lot of people do not know about it, like not do not understand
Mhm.
in details. Like we may
And
have.
so they were not called indentured laborers; they would be called coolies. So any in British India, or even maybe it's used now, but back then it was more derogatory in that way. So any unskilled labor from India would be called a coolie.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm there.
So there are lots of books and literature has been written about this, but it's not in the mainstream and not many of us have come across. We might have seen or read 12 Years a Slave and other such movies and in popular literature, but we've never come across this. And we would hardly any heard of this. But every year there is a program called Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, is organized by the Ministry of External Affairs and the Indian High Commission in each country.
Hmm.
So this is like, they are still a part of diaspora, and they continue to be active uh, uh, partners, you would say.
Okay, so this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas was something which was envisioned, maybe which year? Have any idea? Like when it was envisioned as a connection between their motherland and where they live now?
I think post. Let me check. I don't know
Yeah,
much
so
about
this is the,
that, but recently
I
it was
think,
held in Bangalore.
hmm,
So it was started in 2003.
2003. So 2003 was
Mm.
when the BJP was in government.
Hmm.
The
Yes.
BJP was
Let me just check. Yeah.
ruling.
So this was 18th. Yeah, 2003 was yeah, BJP was in power.
BJP. BJP was in power.
Yeah. Mm.
So that's why. So that's something interesting that uh, the potential of Indian diaspora was not realized
Mm. Hmm.
for over 50
So.
years, we can say, almost 50 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we can go back to our article. So this is something which was, I think, facts needs to be shown to everybody when
Yes.
it started.
So let's start with the article. The article is called "The Contracts That Replaced Chains in the Wake of Abolition of Slavery." Chained by contract, the forced displacement and transformation of millions of Hindu identity through the indentured labor. I will quote from a book that I found very interesting. It's from Mr. Rajendra Prasad from Fiji. So he says, he explains what he has heard about. It's like oral history that has in his family. Overseer's whip comes down upon her half naked back and legs. The child is struck also. Both are crime. Barnicot poured boiling water on Polygardu's genitals. Overseer Bloomfield bashed Narayani's head on stones, her face covered in blood. This is from a book that's called Tears in Paradise, Suffering and Struggles of Indians in Fiji. This was the situation of so-called indentured slavery, I would call, because it's not much
This
difference
is
if you see about
this
it.
is worse than slavery. So if
Yeah, it's worse than slavery.
whatever I'm reading, this is worse than slavery. Even
Mhm.
slaves were treated better than this. And we just shiver reading it. Think about it, what people were feeling on which
Mhm.
these atrocities were committed.
Yeah. So, in return to this, the abolition of slavery in 1834. This year is very important. This was right before 1857, and there were lots of famines in India too. The abolition of slavery in 1834 left colonial economies struggling to replace the labor force. This, this is to say, the colonial economies were heavily dependent on these labor force on across the world in their supposed colonies to support their all the ivory palaces and towers such that had sustained plantation industries. To address this need, indentured labor migration became the solution, recruiting workers from India under the pretext of free contracts. However, this system operated more like neo slavery, coercing workers into harsh environments that mirrored the conditions of enslaved laborers. Hindus, particularly from regions such as present day Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, and eastern Uttar Pradesh, formed the majority of migrants. And yeah, to some extent, even Tamil from the region of Tamil Nadu, but only to certain regions only. So when we say indenture is like a semi-slavery, uh, like the slave before him, the indentured laborer cannot buy his freedom.
Okay, that's interesting.
A slave was punished for not working, right? So also in an indentured laborer, even indentured laborer was punished for not working. If he is negligent, does not attend work for a day, if he answered back, he will suffer imprisonment for any of these lapses. A slave could be sold and handed over by one owner to another. So, so too, the indentured laborer can be transferred from one employer to another. Just sell the agreement that he had signed on. Just an updated version of slavery.
Hmm.
The children of a the children of a slave inherited the state of slavery. Much in the same way, the children of an indentured laborer are subject to laws specially passed for them. They are not free citizens. The only difference between the two states is that while slavery ended only with life, an indentured laborer can be free after a certain number of years. It should not. It should be noted, moreover, that the indenture came after the abolition of slavery, and that indentured laborers were recruited to take the place of slaves. So, I would say, if you consider the era they were living in, considering the age of the life expectancy of the time, I would say they
Mhm.
would spend more than 25% of their life working here of productive life working here, then they do not want to take any responsibilities of the old indentured laborers. They would be let off.
And what happened to them? Do we have any documentation that when
Yeah.
these unfortunate
Some of
people who
them came
were
back, around 20 to 25% of them went back to India where they came from, and most
Mhm.
of them stayed there because they had fled from the conditions they were living in because of famines and other stuff.
uh,
They did not
Nandi,
have anything to go back to.
Nandi, your voice is cracking. From the chat, we can see your voice is cracking.
Should I exit and enter?
Okay. Is it better now, chat? Or we will ask, I will read and Nandi can rejoin.
No, I'll
Nandi, could you, yeah, you
yeah, I'll
rejoin.
exit and enter
Let me
once.
read it. Yeah. Okay, so let me read it. So, indentured laborer can be transferred from one employer. Yeah. Inden- let Nandi come in because yeah, he has that control. Let him join. So let me just see the chat. So we will see what the comments are there. Ah, interesting comments.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, Nandi. Uh, I can hear
So
you. Chat.
this was written. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I think it's much better. Chat is Nandi audible to everyone? Is audio better now?
चलो देखने दो. हाँ, यहाँ देखो. So this was
Okay, I think we can
written
go ahead.
by some. Yeah, this was written by none other than M.K. Gandhi. Yeah. If you see this, this is the photograph uh, that is preserved by Global Girmich Institution. So these were
Giriwit
the
Institution.
indentured.
Interesting.
Yeah, Girmit
Interesting.
is an Indianized word of agreement.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, agreement becomes
we'll
agreement.
explain it
Okay,
later.
so
Yeah, I'll explain. Yeah. So if you see most of them, they were not like, you can, yeah, even children were there. Let's see. So this is indentured men and crew on the deck of a indentured vessel recently that arrived in Georgetown, Demerara. Have you heard of Demerara, anyone? Demerara sugar.
not me. I haven't heard it.
It's Demerara sugar is a term for unprocessed sugar. So Demerara is very famous for sugar plantations even now. So between 1834 and 1920, how many years is it? Almost 96, or is it less? I'm weak in
I think
mathematics. Yeah,
1834,
86.
1834. So yeah, 34. So you 100 minus 20,
So
14. So
86.
100 minus, yeah, correct.
So for say 86 years between 1834 to 1920, approximately 1.2 to 1.5 million Indians were transported under endangered contracts. I will explain the where this source is from, all the data later. The recruitment primarily targeted impoverished Hindus from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Bengal, and then regions that were ravaged by famine, debt, and British economic policies that deliberately
Uh,
weakened these.
Nandi, I think there is some
Yeah,
audio issue. Okay, everybody is having the same audio problem because I can see little bit of noise, but not something which is very bad. So I
uh,
I think somebody is conspiring against us. So we need to check who is conspiring against us. You're using the same mic or you have changed your mic by any chance?
yeah, same mic, same mic.
Same mic. Now it's
Let
better.
me just check
Okay.
on YouTube. How was the stream?
No, it is very good now. I can hear you very clearly.
Just check on YouTube. Yeah.
It is very good now. I can hear you very clearly.
Just check on.
So stick
Yeah,
to it.
it's
That's it.
yeah.
I think there is some
So
network or some issue. So carry on. We'll see. No problem.
yeah, yeah. So if you see this map, this focuses on key regions where all the indentured laborers were from originally, and these squares are the ports that they were transported from. So there is Bombay port, Kolkata port, and Madras, then Madras port, now called Chennai. Yeah. So majority of them came from parts of eastern Uttar Pradesh, southern Bihar, and Jharkhand, some parts of Haryana, and Tamil Nadu, and eastern parts of Godavari coastal parts of Andhra and Telangana, and Maharashtra. Yeah,
Oh, that's
I,
interesting. I
I,
did not know Maharashtra people
I
were
mean,
being.
not in that many. How you say? I'll show you the percentage of all the
Mhm.
uh, later. So yeah, let's just read this. So 1.2, 1.5 millions were transported under indentured contracts. The recruitment primarily targeted impoverished Hindus from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Bengal, mainly regions ravaged by famine, debt, and British economic policies. Recruiters were called Arkatis. Have you heard of the term like or before? Arkatis,
Not,
enticed
no,
laborers.
no.
Mhm. They enticed laborers with false promises of steady wages and free return to India. And that was not
That
the
is
case.
interesting. Interesting. So we now see, correct, the same thing we
Mhm.
see now people from various states, specifically states which are poor economically, they will go to the Middle Eastern countries and they will be promised a lot of things. And when they go there, they see kind of health situations they get into. So this
Mhm.
indentured laborer is practice is being continued even in modern times with labor being exported from Indian subcontinent, that is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and they go to these countries of Middle East and they live in horrific conditions, work for 12 hours a day, and they don't get paid what they were promised. So
Yes.
we see a kind of continuation of similar kind of policies which were happening 200 years ago are being continued in some form or the other even today.
Even in popular media, if you see, recently a movie called Goat Life was released, and that showed the reality of the slavery in Middle Eastern countries that view Indians are inferior even now.
That is something which
So
is
yeah.
been there.
So let's. This is the important part of the article. So if you see this data from, so there were two British possessions and foreign possessions like French and Dutch colonies. Even French did it now, and they're still doing it today. Like not the colonization part, so-called the land of the free and all the they still have colonies in Africa. Anyway, so let's see each how many number of immigrants were immigrated to. Let's start with the largest one. Okay, Mauritius. Between the period of 1834 to 1900, there were 4,53,063 laborers, immigrants from India. Uh, Demerara also called in British Guyana. So Guyana was split into two, British and French Guyana. So we'll talk about British Guyana first. British Guyana between 1838 to 1916, there were 2,38,909 Indians that were emigrated from India to work in plantations of sugar plantations and sugar factories, I guess, also in British Guyana. Trinidad. In Trinidad and Tobago Islands, between 1845 to 1916, 1,43,939 people. In Jamaica, between 1845 to 1913, 36,412. Can you imagine the scale back in like 2 centuries ago? How many ships would be
All
needed to transport such population? Here is a Grenada between 1856 to 1885, 3,200. All the Saint Lucia, Kitts, and Vincent each had 4,350, 337, 2,472 people. In Nevis, 300. In Natal, 1,52,184. Even in Fiji Islands, 60,965. Malay was also one of the largest. Malay is today's Malaysia, 2,50,000. Even 2 centuries ago, these are huge numbers. And even East Africa, so-called, what is it called? East African coast is called Ivory Coast. It's between 1896 to 1921, there were 39,000. And Seychelles, 1904 to 1916, 6,315. In total, in
Nandi,
total,
just
what? Yeah.
Nandi, just one thing. So this Malay people, so they were native Malay people who were being taken, or they were Indians or of Indian descent who were because
No, Indian people
the,
who were taken to Malaysia to work there.
okay,
These are
so
not,
the British
see, this
Empire
is the list of number of immigrants from India.
got it. So it was like a double
Yeah.
migration. So they were first
Yeah.
migrated from Indian subcontinent to these islands in the Southeast Asia or in Africa, and from there
Hmm.
they were again taken to other places.
Hmm. These are
Got
taken
it.
from India to these
Hmm.
islands. I didn't understand your question. So these are the numbers of the people that were taken from India to directly to these islands.
Okay, okay. So I understood incorrectly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people from Indian subcontinent were taken to these lands by the British
Hmm.
from the Indian
Hmm.
correct, subcontinent. Okay, got
Hmm.
it.
In total, 1,178,818 people. These are only British possessions. All the other colonial powers also had. Let's go through them too. These are French colonies. Reunion Island, 1861 to 1883, 26,282. Cien, which is a French colony, which was a French colony, 1883, 4,300. In Guadeloupe, which was a French colony, in 1883, 13,500. In Martinique, 10,000 people. Saint Croix, which was a Dutch colony or Danish colony, 87 people. In
Okay.
Suriname, which was also a Dutch colony, 34,304 people. So in total, the rest of the colonial powers other than British had 88,169 registered immigrants from India. Grand total, the coolie population in above all the colonial colonies, 1,000,000 to 266,987 registered and documented.
So the word coolie was a correct derogatory term used by the British to uh, name people
Yeah.
who were laborers.
Mhm,
It was a kind of a
mhm.
slur, kind of a
Like
racial slur.
unskilled laborers
People,
were named as such, and it was used as a derogatory term by the British.
yes, because I remember in a lot of movies which were based on India, so you will have coolies as mentioned as coolies would
Mhm,
equivalent to Indian people.
yes. So let's see why these destinations and why these recruitment patterns to these islands. Audience have any questions till now?
I don't see any questions, but I see a lot of comments. So anyway, you go ahead and please. If there are
Yeah.
questions, I'll.
So let's start with the destinations and recruitment. So workers were sent to Mauritius, Fiji, Guyana, Trinidad, Suriname, and South Africa to fill the labor shortage of sugar plantations. In Mauritius, one of the earliest hubs, receiving nearly 5 million, 5 lakh, sorry, 5
No,
lakh
no, no,
Indians
half
by the
million.
early 20th, sorry, it's 5 lakh, 500,000 Indians by the early 20th century. Fiji and Trinidad had also had sugar plantations that heavily relied on Indian laborers after emancipation of slavery. In South Africa, the place Natal became home to 150,000 Indian laborers, creating the foundations for the modern Indian community in South Africa. And they faced heavy apartheid in South Africa. This mass migration not only displaced individuals but also fractured social and familial networks, reshaping lives across generations. So, if you see this depiction, this is uh, how naive, impoverished Indians were forced to move to foreign lands on the same ships that had been used for the slaves. Let's start with this. This is one
I
of
have a
such
question. I have
ships.
a question.
Yeah, yes.
I have a question, Nandi, on this specific thing. So we see specifically in Uganda, okay, Uganda where we had the British had it was a British colony, and Indians were there and they were part of the society. Then a military coup happened, and the Indian population, which was primarily well-to-do businessmen of Gujarati origin, they were kicked out,
Mhm.
and the British actually took them in and gave them shelter and citizenship in erstwhile Britain. So,
Mhm.
what is your opinion regarding that?
I mean, they were persecuted everywhere.
Yeah, but I am playing a devil's advocate here. that
Mhm.
although British were colonizers, they did a lot of bad things
Mhm.
to these people,
Mhm.
but they also owned them. So we did not see the government of India helping them and giving them shelter. It was the force, the British who were colonizers, they actually
Mhm.
owned their responsibility and gave them shelter when they were persecuted in Uganda. So what does it
Because the estates
mean? What does
that
it
were belong to them, they went on the promises of this British administration.
mean? Audience,
And on
I want
the
your reactions on this. That the British were the colonial force, but they also owned them and they helped them when they needed help. So audience reaction can also be quite interesting. So go ahead with the reading, and I'll keep an eye on the chat.
that was far later, I guess, right? The
Far later, but the history is that these people were brought by the British to these African colonies,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
when they were persecuted, the British people actually
Mhm.
owned them and gave them shelter in Britain.
Let me just check
But
when
Indian
was
government,
the Ugandan persecution. It was in 1972.
correct, 1972, but correct, these people
Mhm.
were the progeny of the original laborers.
Mhm.
But we did not see the Indian government who had the responsibility, who had the blood relations, who had the culture
Mhm.
relations with these people. They did not help them.
Mhm. I do not know much about it. I need to look into it because
Yeah,
it's
I think
very
we can
much
go ahead with
later.
the
Yeah, we'll do a case study on this.
yeah.
So this was one of such ships called Clyde. It was called a coolie ship, if it's not surprising, that sailed from Calcutta to the Caribbean. This is from the British Library. Uh, Basil Laboc's Coolie Ships and Oil Sailors collection. Coolie ships. Would you look at that? Sail ships. And this was the condition on one of such ships that carried uh, laborers from Bihar. And I guess these were, I'm not an expert in navy or stuff. I think these were a combination of sail ships and steamboats, I guess. Okay, two faces of the same colonial coin. Slavery and indenture, how are they different and similar at the same time? The oppression of indentured laborers was the mirror image of the oppression suffered by enslaved Africans. After slavery was abolished in the British Empire, under the pressure from the anti-slavery lobby, colonial economies faced a labor shortage. To sustain sugar plantations, particularly in Mauritius and the Caribbean, the British turned to indentured labor, coercing Indian laborers into labor under false promises of prosperity. They exploited brown natives of their colonies, misleading them with the illusion of freedom, but in practice trapping them in conditions nearly identical to slavery. Okay. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, British dismantled India's agrarian and industrial base. That is a well-known fact, raising tributes from 70 to 80% during the droughts. In the drought, driving many peasants and artisans off their lands. Recruiters targeted these impoverished people, transporting them to Kolkata's Garden Reach Depot. where they were loaded onto ships once used for slaves and shipped to foreign plantations. Aboard these ships, aboard these vessels, workers were given contaminated water from the cholera infested Hooghly River, and those infected were thrown overboard to prevent the spread of the disease. Do you see the level of inhumanity in this?
Yes, I can read and I can feel it. What were
So I think the
the
Garden
suffering?
Reach Depot is a place in Kolkata's old
Yes,
port.
yeah, the Hooghly River, the river which
Yeah.
connects to the sea.
So mass migration of 1.5 million Indians as indentured laborers not only disrupted life in the diaspora, but also reduced the labor supply back in India. This caused a crisis for Marwari businessmen who relied on local labor for their enterprises. Facing economic challenges, Marwari leaders pressurized Madan Mohan Malaviya, a prominent nationalist, to address this issue of indentured migration. Malaviya ji, in turn, informed Mohandas K. Gandhi, who was at the time fighting the rights of Indian laborers in South Africa, and he invited Gandhiji to back into India. Now you know the origin story. Yeah. So Gandhi, already deeply involved in labor activism in South Africa, look up the cause, advocating against the exploitative indentured system, using it to rally support for the broader nationalist movement against the British rule. So yeah, if you see this was one of the original copy of the indentured contract between this Hunter Arbuthnot and co. of Mauritius and a group of hill coolies from Bengal. I guess from
So this
Dehradun, I guess.
language is Hindi or
Can you read this? Wait, let me just.
uh,
I don't think this is Hindi, but I cannot read it.
uh, yeah, let me just check if I can see it. Audience also can read this if they open the article in their mobile phones or their
Yeah, you can
computers.
open this in. It's Bengali, right?
Let me just zoom in.
Bharati. I can only read first
It
few
is it is
letters.
Bengali. It
Yeah.
is Bengali. It is
Can you read
Bengali.
it if you
Confirm.
can?
Very difficult because
Yeah,
I'll not be
the
able to
text.
read it.
Yeah,
No, I can read a partial, but that will not make any sense because it is
yeah.
like a normal,
Let it be.
very
Let it be.
old writing.
We have other in contracts too. So these
Yeah,
anti-indenture,
what we will do
yeah,
is Nandi, what we will do is
uh-huh,
we will have one more stream where
yeah,
a rep from the diaspora community would be coming to our stream, and
hmm,
there I will I will take the help of AI and try to make it
yes.
readable, and we will read this in the next stream. So audience, listening
Let's
to
see. This is
the
already
stream.
in Mauritius National Archive. If I look up, I will get the text also.
Yes, yes. So we will read this in our next stream. This will be very interesting read, but I don't
Yeah,
think time is something which is there. So
yeah.
we'll skip this one. But we will be reading in the next stream.
So there were lots of anti-indenture movement that were in India, uh, as claimed by this book, which is this book. Let me just go back to see which. So if you see, I'm not making this up. This is quoted in this book, Tears in Paradise by Rajendra Prasad ji. Yeah. So yeah, he says such movements, the anti-indenture movements, were funded by Marwadi. businessmen because they faced very huge lack of labor in locally for their business. Anti-injunction movement activists were mainly Malaviya and M.K. Gandhi. An Anglican priest by the name of C.S. Andrews was also influential, although he was only anti against indenturing women. He was fine with indenturing men. There was Gopal Krishna Gokhale too in the early years. On the other hand, many among the so-called Bhadralok of Bengal thought indenture was a good thing. It took them a while to understand what indenture meant for Indian dignity and sovereignty. The Arya Samaj also played an important role in raising awareness against indenture. Lord Hardinge, and as one of the viceroys at the time, knew indenture was evil and needed to be removed. Instead, he was himself removed for his troubles. So this is one of such tickets of such immigrants. New immigrant of 1862. This is a duplicate ticket. Can you see? Read this very interesting handwriting of Bo. I cannot read this name. Mongur.
Even audience, somebody from audience, if you can read this, you can come and
Yeah.
read it for us. Okay, I can see when imported, it's Calcutta, Calcutta,
Mm-hmm.
Calcutta.
Mm-hmm. Calcutta. So he was
Yeah, a name
when
of
it's imported to Calcutta. Place of birth is Sizia. Yeah, yeah. Huya. Gaya. Gaya was it? Gaya.
yes, I think
Age
Gaya
was
and
yeah 29-year-old. Stature 5 feet 4 inches. Even caste is see the caste. Why is the caste needed? Caste certificate डाल दिए हाँ.
mm,
Okay.
the original caste certificate issued by the British.
Yeah. Yeah. So number of vessels which we introduced was 103Y. Aura. Anyway. Oh, this is father of and
So,
mother's name. His name is Mungur.
mm,
Yeah, this person's name is
Mangur.
Mungur. Hmm. Anyway,
Thank you, Nandis,
I
for
yeah.
documenting and finding this. This is something really great work that you have done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there are many
Yeah, if you
articles
can
which are
see the
in this
clerk's
field.
name also,
Oh,
NMF Arga, I think. This is an Urdu signature, like Persian script here, signature. If you see here,
exactly.
yeah. So indentured labor system was not merely a labor arrangement. It was a part of a larger strategy of colonial exploitation, mirroring the dehumanization of slavery. Both systems operated to extract maximum profit from oppressed communities, perpetuating economic injustice across generations. Yeah, this is Persian. So let's see. So I want to focus on some things. So there is something called Girmit, and these people were called Girmitia. Girmit is a botched up Indian version of a word called agreement. So I don't know if they could not pronounce it or it was just Indianized. It's called Girmit, and these people were called Girmitia, who uh, went went on an agreement, and they went on jihaz means ship in Hindi. So they were all jihaji partners, as to say. Let's start with how the conditions of indentured labor was neo-slavery in practice, as as to say. The life on the plantation. Let's start with the plantation. The life on the plantation as an indentured laborer is not of a very inviting nature character. The difference between this state and absolute slavery is merely in the name and the term of years. The coolies themselves frankly call it narak. Narak means hell in India, in most of the languages. The wages are low and the cost of living is comparatively high. The accommodation appears to us very wretched. There are some lines where the coolies are herded together like so many penned cattle amid the most insanitary conditions and indescribable filth. This is quoted by Burton in the book, in his research paper. This is one of a ship where food was being served to children on a migrant ship. Yeah, let's look at some comments. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yes,
the Jahaz.
uneducated
So,
Indians who couldn't even pronounce agreement, they were made to sign or give their fingerprints on agreements they couldn't understand, and they took advantage of such people. Yeah.
so one thing which it just came to my mind. So the
Hmm.
British were the so-called people who were libertarian. They had their they
Hmm.
had their Charter of Human Rights, all those things which were given rights to the British people. The same
Hmm.
British were
Hmm.
getting their agreements signed by the people who could not read. So a lot of people say the British were quite British who made India what we see today. British built railways. British built a lot of infrastructure that we that we inherited when we got independence. But look at the
Hmm.
exploitation that they were doing.
Hmm.
They were getting those people to put their finger, the thumb impression on an agreement which they could not read. So how they were benevolent people, which a lot of people talk about.
Let me check. There is not even fingerprint on this. They were just, yeah. If you see, there's another thing. There were protectors for these immigrants, like slave herders, slave owners. If you see here in this part, in absence of protector of immigrants, this was signed. It was delivered in
So
absence of protector of
see the
immigrants.
word play. See the word play, correct? So they were taken as slaves, equivalent to slaves, and in documents they are mentioning protectors, whom they are protecting and what they are protecting. Are they going to help these people? Are they going? Are these people have someone to talk? Okay, I need help. I need medicines. I am not doing well. So they were not given any rights. They had no rights at all. And in documentation, they are mentioning protector. So that's when we see words being used to manipulate the meaning, which is exactly there in their lives.
Hmm. So yeah, so indentured laborers signed signed. I don't know if they could write. I guess they did not.
Some impression.
They did not hire many educated Indians.
Yes, obviously,
They only
like
focused on uneducated population, and they took advantage of it.
exactly. So the word signed, correct, they were not signing, they are putting thumb impression.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see how was the contract and what was the punishments and labor conditions in most of the colonies. Workers were required to work 9-hour days, 6 days a week, with wages withheld or directed for rations. Even rations were not given by the uh, so-called plantation owners. Even that was deducted from the pay, the menial pay wages they got. Plantation owners enforced contracts through imprisonment, corporal punishment, and fines. Many workers found themselves unable to return home because their wages were insufficient to pay for passage. There was no free passage to home. You only if you could pay for your own passage back home. They were taken there for free, but to come back, they need to pay for passage. If you see, this was the condition of so-called coolie children in Trinidad in 1890, and this was made into a how we say postcard images to send home by colonialists. This is present in Alma Jordan Library in the universities of West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. If you see, what could be the age of these children? Around these elder children from must be around 6 to 9, and these younger children
Yes.
from all yeah. And they were, I guess, they were supposed to take care of younger children. The elder brothers and the elder siblings were supposed to take of younger children when they were not able to take care of themselves. Yeah. Children were allowed to run around the lines. There were no education privileges. As soon as they turned 12, they had to work in the plantations. This occurred during the earlier years of indenture. After a stubborn fight, even Christian missionaries, the white saviors, were given permission to teach children and also adults. Surprisingly, the immigration departments was in favor of missionaries, and whatever opposition existed, it died out. It was evident that the companies were afraid of that education, particularly in English, would pose a threat to the planters, especially if coolies became Christians, they would have to have the absurd idea that all men were brothers, says
Mm,
Burton in
that's very
his article.
interesting.
Hmm.
That's very interesting. So we see now that it might have been a blessing in disguise. So the diaspora population, which is there in Fiji, in Caribbean, in
Mhm.
South America, they are still Hindus today, and this may be the primary reason why they remain Hindu. If they were given, if the permission was given to the missionaries to teach
To
them,
brainwash all the
they would have
kids. Yeah.
to convert them into Christianity, and then they would not be Hindus anymore. So, as we say, whatever happens, happens for good. It may not sound very good present
Mhm.
circumstances, but these plantation owners were denied education by the missionaries that helped them to keep their own faith, their traditions, and their Hindu faith alive.
Yeah.
Isn't that an
So
irony?
let's yeah. That we'll discuss that in the next article that we have. We'll finish this article soon, and we will come to the faith part of and culture part of diaspora in the next article. Now we'll finish off with the social aspects, the gender imbalance and how it created social tension in the diaspora. So if you see here, uh, so there was a disproportionate uh, gender. Women were in the minority among the indentured workers and were often exploited by overseers Polygamous marriages became common because of the social conditions, disrupting traditional family structure, creating jealousy and conflict within the labor communities. And these women protested in some parts of the plantations. Social fragmentation, cultural adaptations. Although the migration disrupted traditional Hindu structures, the adaptability of Hindu culture allowed migrants to develop syncretic identities that blended elements of Indian and local traditions. This evolution preserved core religious practices and continuity of Hindu identity in unfamiliar environments. Let's come into the important discussion of kinship and caste transformations. Separate these indentured laborers who were separated from their family in India. Laborers formed a new kinship networks within the diaspora. Caste hierarchies gradually eroded as workers from different backgrounds lived, ate, and worked together. This shift allowed new identities to emerge based on shared labor and exile experience. So, if you see here, these were the indentured laborers migrating to British Guyana through Kalapani. So men and women from villages of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar
Nandi,
looking
Nandi,
around. Yeah, yeah.
Nandi. Kalapani
Yep,
refers
yeah,
to the Andaman Islands. The
yeah.
Kalapanis refers
See,
to the Andaman
yeah, yeah.
Islands.
So if you see, mostly Kalapani was part of Indian subcontinent. So when they crossed even before crossing the Kalapani, so when the ship left Kolkata, the indentured laborers reinvent their own caste. They could be identified as anything, right? Because no one could track back there how they wanted to identify as. They could identify as anything. Men and women from villages of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar looking around in the receiving depot and seeing no one could attest to their true origins gave themselves new names which indicated the upward direction which they now wished to pursue. They were now Singh, Sher, Rajkumari, Maharaj, and Mahabir. They could name themselves anything. If you see this, the hopefulness they had in these names, the upward direction they wanted to pursue, and if you see the names they gave themselves, you can see the hope in their eyes. Yeah. So religious resilience and cultural syncretism. Hindu laborers preserved their identity by adapting religious practices to new environments. This processes of syncretism blended Hindu rituals with local customs, ensuring that faith remained relevant and meaningful in the diaspora. The shaded ground under a tree became reconstructed stage for observation, celebration of indentured laborers' religious functions. In the social process, collective religious activity, that is, reconstituted fragments of the original strengthened homogeneity, resulting in ethno-religious and socio-cultural boundaries being constructed. What it means is, guys, Hindus came together in collective religious activities and celebrated their culture and preserved their faith. Pandits supervised the construction of Hinduism in colony of Guyana. No mandirs were necessary. Still, neighbors, friends, and
Nandi,
jahajis. Yeah,
Nandi, one question. You
yeah,
mentioned Pandit. So it
yeah.
means, see, when we see the history of India, where caste plays a very important role, and we know we are taught that Brahmins were the oppressors. They were the upper caste, and they would be oppressing the lower caste. So how this uneducated labor class had Pandits? Were Brahmins
Well,
also uneducated and laborers?
maybe the situations of the time. Maybe he knew, like they knew basics of religious practices, but they were still poor and uneducated in the sense. They were just as poor as the next person in the ship.
So it means that landholders, Brahmins were also poor, uneducated, and laborers.
Yeah, there are lots of uh, indentured laborers. Yeah. So instead of the old what you how you say community, they formed new communities called jihadis. Jihadis means shipmates. So all the people who came from the same ship became shipmates or jihadis and attended kathas, often called jhandis, officiated by the priest in the home. This facilitated religious continuity among the indentured laborers in British Guyana before Hindu temples were constructed, says Seacharan in 1977 book. Later, temples were constructed on plantations, and festivals such as Diwali and Holi were celebrated later. Let's see what this book has to say. Expressly, religious boundaries further served to combat the threat of conversion to Christianity and the cultivated collective resistance of to indentured laborers' marginalized status in British Guyana. So this was the reason why they did not get converted to the popular Christian culture in British Guyana. What is the let's see, let's go back to the culture, the faith part of in the next article. Let's quickly finish off this with the long term. How did it affect the long term impact on the diaspora? The legacy of indentured labor migration continues to shape Indian diaspora communities, influencing their culture, practices, and social status today. Let's see how. Racial discrimination and marginalization. Indentured laborers were treated as second class citizens, facing racism from both colonial authorities and other ethnic groups. In South Africa, Indians were positioned below both Europeans and freed Africans, limiting their social mobility. Even after indenture ended, these communities still struggled with systemic marginalization. If you see, this was a picture from ethnic Indian protest in Kuala Lumpur, where Malaysian police fired water cannon on November 25th of 2007. This was the biggest street protest ever over systematic racial discrimination against ethnic Indian community, and they are not considered Bhumiputra in Malaysia because only the Malay natives are called Bhumiputra, and Chinese diaspora is very influential and has cultural and political capital. But Indians don't have that uh, privilege in Malaysia. So, syncretic identity and community building. Despite these challenges, Indian communities across diaspora built various religious institutions, schools, social organizations to preserve their heritage. Even today, many festivals like Diwali are celebrated in places like Trinidad and Mauritius, and this syncretic identity have become central to national cultures. Through this evolution, the Hindu identity has remained adaptable, resilient, and deeply rooted in community practices. Then can you see this? Can you see this?
Yes.
So this
So
is
this
called
is
something called a coolie line. This is a part of the plantation where coolies are held, like a chicken coop.
Mm.
Yeah. Conclusion and reflection. Let's conclude this faster. The indentured labor system, though framed as voluntary alternative to slavery, it was not voluntary, as to say, perpetuated exploitation under post-emancipation capitalism. Yet, Hindu identity, willingness to evolve through syncretic practices ensured the cultural continuity was not lost. Laborers, their descendants, developed identities that integrated both ancestral heritage and local traditions, creating dynamic and thriving communities despite their displacement. Today, these communities continue to navigate dual identities, balancing diasporic experience through with Hindu traditions. Their story is one of the survival, adaptation, and transformation, and is a testament to the resilience of human spirit and culture. Yeah. So, as Rajendra Prasad says, even in the stillness of cane stalks, one can almost feel the powerful presence of the spirits of sorrow and grief exuding from these sugarcane fields. They are the spirits of our ancestors, and these are the ancestors. Yeah. End of article number 1. Anyone has any questions?
Yeah,
We have 5 people watching
there
right
are
now.
few comments. They're very good comments. Let me first show this
Yeah.
comment.
Even if India were
J,
to give them So he says, even if India were to give them help, they would have preferred the UK because at the time of their financial status was much higher than India. True. Ask them now.
yeah,
Anyway.
I agree with the comment by Mr. Jainath. But my question is, did India offer them help? They are refusing it. It's their choice where they want to go. But did the Indian government went back,
Indian
flinch
government.
on their responsibility to offer help to these people? They were it was their motherland. It was the duty of Indian government to provide help in whatever way
So they
possible.
did not provide.
Uh,
That was my
I
question.
don't know any documentation. I don't think because there is no documentation available which I have read. We may dig more into it. But essentially, it was the British people who helped the Indian community in Uganda who were suffered persecution, and they were given I think 24-hour notice. I'm not the data the hours might be not
Okay. I
exactly
found
correct,
out.
but
I found out. What do you say? So there were other Asians as well. Okay. So I have a paper from 1972, Patel. So he says.
Mhm.
Uh, Many Ugandan Asians were citizens of UK and colonies already.
Okay, so they held
Tw-
dual citizenship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so because they were UK citizens, the UK
Hmm.
government had to give them shelter.
Yep,
It was not something of
yep.
their
Hmm.
benevolence, but their legal obligation to do that. That's
Yeah.
a important data point that we did
Legal,
not know.
yeah, yeah. And of
Yeah,
the
so
other refugees were accounted for. 6,000 went to Canada, 4,500
mhm,
ended up in India, 2,500 went
mhm,
to nearby Kenya, Malawi, and other countries. And
it would
Pakistan,
be
West
interesting.
Germany, and United States took 1,000 refugees each,
Mhm,
and about 20,000 refugees were unaccounted for,
mhm,
and only a few hundred remained behind. Okay, so this was the story. Very interesting.
mm.
This is later,
So
much later.
yeah, that's much later because it is there anyway. Like it's a historical thing. But the thing is, Indians took 6,000 people. That is not really documented, but not really in public eye. Because whatever we
Yes.
know is that from BBC reports, that the British government took these people, and they failed to mention that they were British citizens. They had the
Hmm.
legal obligation to help them.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
they
let's
should have
take
mentioned.
few comments.
Yeah.
Hmm. So let's
Yeah.
take few more comments and then we'll go to the next article. We'll finish quickly. So there's one comment from Nina, is very important. There, the people were taken without agreement simply by kidnapping.
Okay. I think there was
I'm
a
not
bounty,
sure.
not a bounty system, but there was an how do you say uh, incentive system for each
Mhm.
laborer that you get. The person would get this much amount. That would be the system. So this would might be the case too, like human trafficking, as he's saying.
Yeah, correct. So we also have in like in modern India and in modern world we have contractors, and the contractors would be given task. Okay, you need to bring 100 people, and they would bring those
Hmm.
100 people by whatever means necessary, even kidnapping or doing illegal ways of getting people, like false promises, which happens today.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it predates the modern thing. So even in 200 years ago, there were
So
contractors who were
mhm. This was a gift
yeah,
directly
they
from
were
the
given
British then.
yeah. So British were incentivizing human trafficking by giving these
Hmm.
contracts to people to bring them in, so that they will not be held responsible. The British
Hmm.
could say, we did not bring them in. These were people, Indians themselves were bringing these people by doing false promises and getting them into these colonies. So legally,
Hmm.
they will not be held responsible.
Hmm.
So there's one more important comment which Nizar made.
Hmm.
So regarding the Brahmins. So yes, the many Brahmins also were poor in Bihar and UP. So this narrative of Brahmin supremacy that we see specifically in the southern Indian states, in Tamil Nadu specifically, where we see Brahmins as a single entity of oppressors, of collaborators in some form or the other. And Bharat or India is a humongous country with a lot of diversity in terms of region, in terms of topography, in terms of language, how people look, what people eat. So this so-called narrative of Brahmins as oppressors is something which is being debunked and can be debunked by reading this one article where we see Brahmins as uneducated laborers, and the same Brahmin would be uh, a munsi or a clerk or maybe having higher positions. So it's not a binary. There is
Yeah.
diversity within the Brahmin community itself. They can be laborers. They also can be chief ministers or clerks or secretaries.
Hmm.
Let me check before we go to the next article.
Let me just prepare the next
It's
article.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Abhay Agarwal. So as we found out later that government of India did take around 6,000 people. So that data
4,500.
is
4,500. Yeah.
4,500 people the Indian government
Yeah.
took. So that data is not publicly available. So we have to go and do
Yeah. Yeah.
research and
It's
find out.
a
Then we'll be able to know.
research article that was there. There is no public data.
Yes. So there is one more comment from Abhay Agarwal. These things happen in UAE, Saudi, etc. Even today, their passports are taken away after contracting them. Exactly, that's what the point I was talking about. That abolition of slavery and the so-called indentured labor, the name fashion, is nothing but slavery in another form. And the same slavery is being practiced today in modern times in Middle East by the Gulf countries. So when we say today that slavery does not exist, it is nothing but a lie. There are slave labor in Pakistan, in Sindh. So there are Western agencies who are freeing slave labor, indentured labor in Sindh, Pakistan, even today. I don't know where are the humanitarian organizations, UN, and when they will take notice of this and do something about it. Let's see.
Yeah,
Okay, I
let's move
think
ahead.
we have covered
Yeah.
on the comments.
Can you remove the comment, highlighted comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just doing it.
So next article is called
Yes, please.
Sacred Spaces in. Wait, let me just do it. Yeah. So next article, we'll move on to the next article now, since we have discussed so much about all the things.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sacred spaces in new lands. How preserving faith in foreign lands. The Hindu diaspora and cultural integration. This is one of such illustrations that show how first indentured laborers arrived in Mauritius. Let's see how where is Mauritius for the uninitiated. Mauritius is here. If you see, this is the tiny island in the in the far ends of Indian Ocean. Yeah. So they left everything behind, carrying only their gods, their stories, and their memories. And these were enough to rebuild their world. Holy Woman in the book by Gayatri Bahadur. She says, and this is why it is important, uh, the legends, yeah, in our culture and any as stories that we tell our to the next generation, why they are important, so that even with those only the stories and the gods and their memories, you can rebuild an entire society in foreign lands without much resources. Introduction. Journey of Hindu diaspora across countries like Mauritius, Trinidad, Fiji, and Guyana, across the continent of America and Europe, demonstrates remarkable resilience for these communities. Sacred spaces have been more than places of worship. They have served as cultural sanctuaries and social hubs, offering continuity amidst displacement and discrimination. Temples, family structures, and community networks have played crucial roles in maintaining religious practices while fostering belonging in foreign lands. This article explores how sacred spaces, family traditions, and public festivals have helped Hindu diaspora sustain their cultural identity. It also addresses long term challenges such as communal violence, cultural appropriation, and media misrepresentation of Hindu diaspora, which complicate their integration into host societies. If you see this image, this is one of such memorials in Port Louis of Apravasi Ghat in Saint Port Louis, landing place of indentured laborers, and there are footprints on it. Sacred spaces and religious continuity. Sacred spaces such as temples are central to cultural continuity of the Hindu diaspora, evolving from makeshift shrines to fully functional cultural centers over time. Evolution of Hindu temples and sacred spaces. During early years of migration, indentured laborers held religious ceremonies outdoors or in homes. Over time, these gatherings evolved into structured congregations and eventually temples were built to formalize rituals and practices, says Bowman in the book. Cultural programs and community engagements. Many temples today offer classes on Indian classical music, dance, and religious education, ensuring younger generation remain connected to their heritage. This people, the importance of telling your children the legends and stories and informing about them about our culture and is important because even if they were taken to foreign lands without many resources, they can rebuild an entire society. Temples serve not only as spiritual hubs but also places where communities gather for social activities, creating networks of support that extend beyond religion. These sacred spaces are vital for maintaining the collective identity of the diaspora. If you see this, this is one of such plantation temple in Mauritius. Like on the plantation, there are looks like three mantaps, and yeah, here I can't see which temple is it, but yeah. So this is a plantation style temple in South Africa of the goddess Mariamman. Mariamman from I guess yeah, she's a goddess from Tamil Nadu region. Yeah, I guess the most of the
Yes.
yeah most of the laborers in South Africa in this plantation were of that origin. So you can see how they made a makeshift structures for temples, and even in the absence of temples, they had really, congregations in the open spaces to commemorate their uh, sacred spaces, or you know, and their faith and practices. Temples are far more than religious sites for them. They represent continuity in the face of displacement. As Stephen Wojtowicz notes, temples serve as social reservoir where rituals, values, and memories are preserved, transmitting heritage across generations. Wojtowicz, 2000, he says in his book. He says the importance of temples in foreign lands. What these structures are not just buildings; they are not just places where people worship. They are also social reservoirs where value system of the society and memories, oral
Nandi,
histories, memories are preserved. Yeah,
Nandi, just one
yeah.
specific thing which I noticed here. Uh, when the Ram Mandir movement was taking place in 1980s, there
Hmm.
were a lot of modern people, educated people, politicians, sociologists, even normal people. They would say, what is building a temple? What good it can bring to a community? Why don't we build a hospital? Why don't we build a school, a college, uh, an institute where everybody would come and learn? What is the value
Hmm.
of temple? So right now, what you are reading is giving specific answer to those people who were
Hmm.
advocating to not build a temple, build a hospital, build a college,
Hmm.
where all people can come and learn. Now, understand, a temple is not a temple. A temple is a community's heartland where people come, people talk to each other, people share stories, they preserve traditions, they preserve memories. So, all those people who
Hmm.
are listening to this thing, this is
Hmm.
a scholar who wrote a book on this, and they mention the value of a temple for a Hindu community. Go ahead.
From makeshift shrines to grand temples, during the early years of indenture, laborers worshipped under trees or in humble homes. Over time, these practices evolved into organized rituals within temples and reinforcing social cohesion and identity. And this is the beauty of dharmic traditions and Hindu religion. that anywhere where you go and in any condition that you will be able to follow your faith. Community and cultural preservation. Hindu temples provide a space for community members to meet, celebrate festivals, and teach younger generations traditional practices, fostering a sense of belonging. Temples also act as sanctuaries where people can connect with their roots amidst unfamiliar cultural landscapes. Yeah, I will not. Yeah, let's see this. This is called a Jhandi flag. What does Jhandi mean in Hindi? Jhandi means, I
Jhandi,
guess, yeah,
Jhanda means flag in Hindi. So
mhm,
Chandi might be a plural of
the ritual,
Jhanda.
or yeah, Jhandi may
I'm
be
not
plural
really,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but in Hindi, Jhanda means a flag.
So this is called a temple in the sea. It's a temple in Trinidad and Tobago, and this is the ritual followed in Caribbean islands by the Hindus. And these are the flags, different colored flags, each color to each deity they uh, hold holy. And the photos, if you see here, the pictures of the deity will be on the jhandi, and it's not just one color, all the colors are included to represent each goddess or god. Let, let me show you how beautiful this temple in the sea is. In the temple of the sea, temple in the sea, Sevalal. Let's go around the, yeah. Can everyone see this? This is
Oh,
a beautiful temple.
yes,
Yeah, see, if you see this, we'll zoom out. So this is on the Caribbean islands of the Trinidad and Tobago. Here, if we zoom here, you can see on the coastline, you can see a beautiful structure that you have to pass here, and you can see the temple here. This is the temple that I was showing, the Jhandi practices. This is called a Sevlal temple. There's a beautiful
that's
history
really
behind
beautiful.
this temple. Yeah, yeah. Hello.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very beautiful temple, and uh, surrounded by the blue waters. It's really going to be beautiful
Hmm.
visiting the place.
Hmm. So if you see here, these are the temple. This is the temple. You can see various types. I think, yeah, Hanumanji, Ganeshji, Shivji, Deviji, Durgaji, I guess, Krishnaji. Everyone is here in the temple. Everyone together. And see, these are the jhandis I was talking about.
Yeah. So
See
Abhay
if you
has
can.
mentioned in the chat that Jhandi means small flag.
Jhandi me, yeah. So this is the temple. Yeah. So this temple also has a beautiful history. And okay, let me just, yeah. If you see this temple, this was founded by someone called the indentured labor called Sevdas Sadhu. and he came. He was born in 1803 in India, and he came to Trinidad with his parents as indentured laborers. He worked in Waterloo estates, and after the completion of his indentureship, he vowed to build a place of worship in Waterloo with his lifetime savings. With his first structure was built on the land near the sea in Waterloo, but was destroyed with an altercation between landowners and the sugarcane companies. This setback did not deter Sadhu, and he rebuilt at the sea again. Unfortunately, after his death, the temple was remained neglected and was reclaimed by the sea. In 1994, a decision was taken to rebuild the structure on site, and it was completed in 1995. And since then, it is called Sevdas Sadhu Shiv Mandir. And since then, yeah, it's very famous in Trinidad. It's a, yeah, it's one of the
So
such
some
temples
stories
that I
of
was
hope.
talking about. Yeah,
So few stories of hope in the midst of
yeah.
distress.
hmm It's like a, it's built like a lighthouse for a. It's very poetic if you see it like that. In the middle of nowhere, in the middle of ocean. It's built up like a lighthouse of hope. Yeah.
Correct.
Let's see what Paul Younger has to say about these sacred spaces. So, as described by Paul Younger in New Homelands, the establishment of sacred spaces was critical to the survival of Hindu traditions within the diaspora communities. Temples not only became sites of religious worship but also centers of cultural preservation and community development. In Mauritius, let's go one by one now. Mauritius. This is one of such temples in Mauritius. There are many temples in Mauritius, including those at Camp de Malabards, reflecting the influence of South Indian styles. So Malabar is a coast from South India, right? So yeah, Camp de Malabard is French word or Dutch word for Camp of Malabars. Yeah, and blending regional archetypes with local innovations. The Grand Basin Lake has become a prominent pilgrimage site, linking local community spirituality to the sacred Ganges River. How do you see get a Ganga River in Mauritius? But here it is, the Grand Basin of Mauritius, which is also called Ganga Talao. Talao means, I guess, talab,
Lake,
which means
no,
lake.
lake. A
Yeah.
small. Not lake. Talao is like pond. Pond. It's pond.
Mhm. Yeah, it's called the Ganga Talab. It's a pilgrimage site for Hindus in Mauritius. And there is even Kanwar Yatra that is taking place Mauritius every year. We have heard about Kanwar Yatra in UP, and it was very controversial this year because of all the wrong reasons, I guess. You know, but it's
Yes.
still taking place in Mauritius too. It's not very specific to UP anymore, but it is
I
of UP
imagine.
origin.
I
Yeah.
I imagine because like a lot of people from UP and Bihar
hmm
were
hmm
were transported there. So there might be
hmm
also Kamal Yatra taking place in Fiji or in Suriname.
Yeah. hmm It's a very beautiful tradition, if you ask me. You know, somewhere across
Yes.
the oceans on the other side of the earth. So
Oh,
this is something
that's
called
very beautiful.
Maheshwarnath Shiv Mandir in Triolet, and this is very confluence of all the influences. You can see, you might say, like multiple local traditions that have affected the Hindu diaspora. They have just absorbed these cultures and made it their own.
Yeah, one interesting thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but this the dome structure is something which is related to maybe Persian architecture, which came to India with the invasions, with the Islamic invasions. So we see dome as a kind of structure. So I think we see also
I don't think
not
it is
a
of
dome.
Islamic origin. I would say domes were
Hmm.
very famous in
Hmm.
Buddhist stupas as well.
Hmm.
So I would not say it was essentially an Islamic. If there is a dome, it's not Islamic because many of the Buddhist stupas have domes. That is far
Yeah,
older.
but the temple tradition, the North Indian temple
Hmm.
tradition,
Hmm.
and the South Indian temple tradition, we don't see a
Hmm.
dome, but we see a kind of a curved triangle, a long curved
Hmm.
triangle. Okay, not a dome,
Hmm.
as a temple structure. So if you see the Ram Mandir which is been built now, so
Hmm.
it is called the Nagara style of temple building, Nagara style.
Uh-huh. So this may be inspired by cathedrals, this kind of structures.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you see this, this is what they were talking about when there is uh, from South Indian, Southern Indian culture influences on this temple. It's called Sokalingam Minachi Amman Kovil. Kovil means temple, so this would be a double temple anyway. So Meenakshi Amman means Meenakshi Devi's temple, maybe. Yeah, this is there in the same Mauritius, and it looks very beautiful, and they are still maintaining it. Good, very good. And if you see the locations of these temples, they are so beautiful in such natural places. They preserve the eco structure of the places too.
Just one more thing which I find interesting is that
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
ancient temple architecture, you had water bodies as part of the temple architecture, even in the Nagara
Hmm.
style, also in the South Indian style. But we
Hmm.
have seen the water body as part of the temple architecture is being lost in North India, but it is still being retained in South India. So in every temple in India,
Hmm.
you'll see a water body
Yeah, yeah.
as part of its architecture.
It's very important for the sacred rituals too. Like if it's linked to the sacred ritual, I think it will remain.
Correct.
Because every like if there is there are rituals where you have like you have to every day every morning you have to take the water from the same source in the temple, then that culture will remain.
Yeah. So even I visited a temple in southern
Hmm.
India, and the tradition is
Hmm.
that you have to wash your before
Yes.
you enter the temple. So water
Hmm.
is part of the ritual, okay, part of the
Hmm.
temple architecture, part of the tradition of
Hmm.
devotees going there to see their devta, Devi.
Hmm. Yes, it's very beautiful. So if you ask me, yeah, let's move ahead with the next colony, like past colony, erstwhile colonial islands of British, evil British colonialism, still the homes of Hindu diaspora, the Guyana and Trinidad. In the early years, indentured laborers worshipped outdoors or in home, but later practices evolved into organized rituals within formal structures. These temples acted as symbols of cultural resistance against conversion efforts by missionaries. If you see here, you can see the beautiful temple at the sea that I showed you earlier, and devotees here eating with prasadam with their families. You can see how has become a safe space for Hindus in foreign lands and even their descendants, even now. This is a
Yeah,
temple
Nandi,
in Fiji. Yeah,
I think
hmm,
it's 2 hours. So
yeah, yeah. We'll
we'll
finish it
just
now.
remain about
Yeah, sure. So this is a temple in Fiji which provided social stability amidst systemic racial segregation in Fiji, creating safe spaces where Hindus could express their faith and freely maintain solidarity. If you see this is Shiva Subramanya temple in Fiji, which has a southern Indian, I guess Nagara style is northern Indian, right?
No,
The
yeah, yes,
temple
yes. So you have
architecture.
the Nagara style.
What is the southern Indian?
Yeah, yeah. So
What is
name I am
southern
not know,
Indian
but the temple,
uh,
no, that
architecture?
the name I am not remember right now.
Yeah.
But one thing
Hmm.
is that the southern Indian temples are built on a, specific architecture, and it is called Agama Shastras. So every
Agam
temple which
Shastra.
is built in southern India, so based on the principles of Agama Shastra, the temples are built in
Hmm.
southern India. So the
Hmm.
name exactly I do not remember right now, but every temple needs to be built on the principles
Hmm.
of Agama Shastra to become a sacred place
Yeah.
of positive energy.
Yeah. Let's see. Role of sacred books in maintaining an identity. This is very important that I wanted to bring up. Sacred texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana in the form of Ramacharita serve as moral and spiritual guides for diaspora communities, offering wisdom to navigate adversity. Let's start with Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita as moral compass, teaching on duty, dharma, and karma yoga inspire resilience, helping individuals to stay rooted in their values despite the discrimination and social inclusion. How storytelling was used as for cultural transmission in Guyana and Trinidad, religious gatherings known as Ramacharita Kathas center around recitations from the Ramayana, providing both entertainment and spiritual nourishment. These gatherings reinforce moral teachings and cultural pride within the community. As Paul Younger describes in diaspora communities, the Ramacharita becomes more than a scripture. It serves as a community shared memory with kathas, storytelling sessions, reinforcing moral values. These gatherings serve as moments of reflection, fostering solidarity through shared narratives. Ayan. He also says, through repeated storytelling, a group's identity is affirmed, giving the displaced community strength and cohesion. And I guess by all this, the community has more stability in foreign lands. Even Arya Samaj did some. Even Arya Samaj has some temples. I forgot to mention it in there. Yeah, Hindu legends were enacted under trees with entire communities in attendance, serving as moments of collective affirmation. This is the importance of the culture and tradition when you are discussing the stability of a society from foreign lands. How family structure and community network of the culture. Uh, if you want to read more, you can check out these articles in the description again and in the pinned comments. Okay. So the role of family in integration. Families were often serve as the primary source of cultural transmission, ensuring traditional values passed on to future generations. Second one, how community support networks provided during support during the times of crisis, reinforcing a sense of belonging within the diaspora. In the Caribbean diaspora, the traditional harvest songs and bhajans and wedding night ditties have blended with calypso rhythms, creating something called chutney music. If you want to
Okay.
check out this chutney music on YouTube, you'll find amazing songs. Chutney music also has some Bhojpuri elements to it. And yeah, it's very interesting if you see. And originating primarily in Trinidad and Guyana and Chutney reflects syncretic identity of these Indo-Caribbean communities, merging Indian devotional and folk melodies with African and Creole references, influences. Bhajans, once sung as expressions of devotions, taken new life with calypso beats, while wedding songs evolve into vibrant celebratory tunes performed at festivals and public events. Chutney music not only celebrates fusion of cultural heritage, but also symbolizes resilience and adaptability of the diaspora's uh, identity amidst evolving landscapes. Family as the foundation of traditions. Families serve as custodians of religious practices, transmitting values of disciplines, respect for elders, and devotion of God across generations. If you see this again, the Jhandi in front of a home, and this is one of the Kanwar Yatra, right? This is Mahashivratri Kanwar Yatra in Mauritius. These are the similar things that are practiced in India. You can see the camp here. Each camp has its own processions. Yeah, public
How
celebrations as
beautiful it will be
acts.
to
Yeah,
celebrate them.
yeah. These such public celebrations were act of cultural resistance to, these are the pressures against assimilation into the local culture and having their own identity. These public festivals like Diwali and Holi are expressions of cultural pride and resistance against pressure to assimilate. If you see this, this is a Indian festival of Pongal in uh,
Hmm.
Buffon's sugar factory. And if you see the sugar canes here, which is very central in Pongal festival, and you can
Yeah,
see the Indian instruments. I don't know what is called in uh, local language, but it just looks like taase. I don't know what
in
is
North India
exactly
it is
called.
called dhol. In North India it is
Mhm.
called dhol.
Th-
So, but
This is called
there
dole.
are variations
But
across
this
India.
is since they mentioned Pongal, I thought these indentured laborers were of southern India, and the Pujari person here is very distinctively
Yeah,
of
this
Tamilian
whole
origin.
whole kind of instrument is something which
Hmm. Very interesting. If you see the image like this, and this is such a modest float from one of the uh, Diwali motorgates in Guyana.
hmm,
There were processions of motorgates, and this is Shivratri procession in Mauritius. So whoever calls uh, the Kanwar Yatra never existed before, it's fake, and in some of the comments, see this. How is Kanwar Yatra being performed in Mauritius then? This is how multiple temples are decorated and streets are decorated for Diwali in Mauritius. Let's move on to other places. This is Singapore, Sirarangan Road for Diwali. This is the decoration done.
yes,
Celebrations have
I
become
was
public
fortunate.
events. Yeah.
Yes, I was there
Okay.
fortunately to witness this with my own eyes.
Hmm.
It's really beautiful the way they celebrate Diwali
Yeah.
in Singapore, especially the
Hmm.
Indian community.
Hmm. So, what is the importance of youth participation in such events? Public celebrations engage younger generations, fostering pride in their heritage and prepare them to become future community leaders. See, if you involve, like usually in any Hindu festivals, y- younger generations are seen to be in very much engagement with the cultural heritage. And this is the kind of thing you see Indo-Caribbeans in 19th century celebrating Indian culture in West Indies through dance and music in estate Trinidad and Tobago under a tree. And how is it very central to Hindu identity and Indian identity, and how they were able to still preserve their society as a part of and being their own. This is very in today's day and age. If you see the amount of immigrants moving to other countries, how they were having very difficult time of assimilating, right? So, but you see, Indians and Hindus have very easy time of assimilation into any foreign country. How is it possible, if you ask?
Yeah, so that happens because of, we believe in a syncretic culture, and
Hmm.
we incorporate the local culture within our own traditions and create something new. So, Nandi, we will end this stream today for now.
Yeah.
We will be having one
Hmm.
more stream where we'll be
Hmm.
talking more about Indian diaspora. So,
Hmm.
we have a special episode coming up maybe next week where we will have
Sure, sure.
people who are living in Mauritius. They will be coming to our stream to talk to us, to share their experience live with us. Uh, so, everybody who's listening to this, I request everybody and invite everybody to join that stream that will be coming next week, where we will be talking to the Indian diaspora community in Mauritius, and they will be available live to talk about their lives, their ancestors, their currently how they live, how they preserve their traditions. So, on that note, I'll thank Nandi once again for this great, excellent research article he has written. And we all must congratulate Nandi for his great work. And we wish Nandi that he does more of these articles so that we can learn more about Indian diaspora, which unfortunately we do not know as of now. So thank you everybody. Thank you Nandi. Thank you audience. I'll just take one comment. It's very interesting comment. So Jane mentioned, read the book by Dharampal, The Beautiful Tree, how the British destroyed Indian education system, and at one time 80% or more students being taught in a Gurukul by a Brahmin were of the lower caste. So yes, so on caste there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of selective information which is being given in public, which misleads people. So we are here trying to debunk those things by reading scholarly articles, books, not opinions, but documented information, documented scriptures, which try to debunk this specific initiative, specific agenda, narrative of Brahmin supremacy. So we will always try to do that. In our also future streams, we will be focusing more on caste and how caste is something which is beyond specific hierarchy. So we keep an eye on this. And for this, we'll end the stream today. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Nandi. Good evening, good morning, and
Hmm.
good night, everybody, wherever you listen to this. Bye, everyone.